Today's fairy tale is a really brutal and yet beautiful and kind of hopeful story from Denmark. It's called The Princess Who Became a Man, and it is dark and upsetting. Content warning for incest, self-mutilation, child mutilation. But like most folklore about people who magically change gender, it's an amazing exploration of the psychology of growing up and changing, the psychology of female versus male roles, the patriarchy, misogyny. If you can stomach it, it's worth listening to and discussing. It starts like donkey skin and all kinds of fur and the many tales about a king whose wife dies and then he wants to marry his daughter. This obviously puts the daughter, our protagonist, in a horrible position. Within the patriarchal power structure, she has no power. She is the daughter, the girl, the subject of the king. Her father wants to victimize her because of the body she was born into, and so she runs from him. Father sends his hounds after her, and when she hears them closing in, she cuts off both of her breasts and throws them to the hounds. They each ate a breast before running back the way they had come. The princess then gathered moss to staunch her wounds and traveled deeper into the woods. It's fascinating because she mutilates the thing that is making her father want to victimize her, her body. But she's also using her body, the only thing that she has left, to help save herself. After she escapes, she meets an old man in the woods, and this man is the opposite of her father. He definitely seems to represent a good father figure, what men should be, what real protection is, and even God. He takes her in, helps her heal, and then he gives her a gun. He teaches her how to shoot, and before long, she became an accomplished marksman. The clothes she had worn as a princess were of no longer any use to her, so he gives her some of his own male clothing. Not only is he nurturing where her father was destructive, but he sees her potential to learn new things and grow and develop skills and be a person. And he supports her subversion of the gender that she has now started to leave behind. And one day he says, "I've now taught you everything I know. It's time for you to make your own way in the world. The royal palace is looking for a gamekeeper. That'd be a great job for you. And if you ever find yourself in trouble, just think of me and I'll be there." So again, where the father wanted to trap her and keep her like an animal, this guy is encouraging her to go out and find herself and have freedom. The protagonist goes to another country, gets hired by the king, becomes a great gamekeeper, and falls in love with his daughter, the princess. They are about to get married, but then this Red Knight, who's a antagonistic figure that enters a lot of European folklore, he discovers our protagonist's secret and so wants to expose it so that he can get the princess. So he says, "Hey, we should all go bathe together." The king agrees and all the men go out to bathe together, and of course our protagonist is freaking out, but then she remembers the man who said, "Think of me if you need help." And so she does. And as soon as she does, this magical stag bounds through the water and runs off into the woods. And she just knows, I need to follow that stag. So she follows the stag out into the woods, and there is the old man. The old man says, "I can transform you into a man right now if that's what you wish. But you are going to have to return one day and give me your firstborn child." Very Rumpelstiltskin. The protagonist agrees, and he is transformed into a man. He goes back, the Red Knight's plan is foiled, he marries the princess, lives happily, they give birth to a child. When the day comes for the exchange to happen, the prince takes his child and goes and meets the old man out in the woods. Now this part's going to be really horrible, but I promise it'll all be okay and end well. The old man puts the child on a chopping block, takes an axe and chops it between its legs up to its navel. Then he says to the prince, "Did that give you pain?" And the prince says, "Yes." And then the old man says, "It pained me just as much when I saw you that day that your father desired to marry you." Then he chops the kid again and said, "Did that give you pain?" And the prince says, "Yes." And then he says, "It pained me just as much when you needed to cut off your breast and throw them to your father's dogs." Then he chops the child again, the prince says yes again, and the child has been sacrificed. It feels like this really barbaric symbol, or this barbaric way of forcing the prince to relive the trauma he went to and to see it through the eyes of the man. He sees his own powerless child be hurt the way he was powerless and his father wanted to hurt him. And maybe now he's able to fully experience or understand what horror was being put on him as a child, like how much he didn't deserve it, just like his child doesn't. Fortunately, it's not over. It ends happily, and kind of like Abraham and Isaac in the Bible, the child gets brought back to life. The sacrifice is undone because it either wasn't real or it is just symbolic, and the child gets to live and they get to move on and be happy with their lives, having relived that and worked through it somehow together. because the prince then does take the child home and lives happily ever after. Like all of these stories, in a way, this is not a trans story. First of all, the hero chooses his gender, whereas that doesn't seem to be the case for most trans people. And like all of these, you can also argue that it's sexist and bending to the patriarchy because it's suggesting that being male is a happy ending, that being male is preferable. But in a patriarchal society, that's true, being male is preferable. And you could argue that these stories are a critique of that society where you're in danger as a female and where you have to mutilate yourself or change or run away or do anything to escape harm that should never have come to you in the first place. I almost didn't make a video about this story because it just somehow is more upsetting to me than the millions of really upsetting cannibalism, mutilation stories I've told you. It just gets at the heart of human trauma and helplessness. But at the same time, there is triumph over it. There is help. There is good guides and good nurturers and ways to find a happy ending. My next fairy tale will be another magical gender change one that isn't nearly as upsetting. And as always, check out my book, Dust Spells, a reimagining of the 12 Dancing Princesses, and my podcast. All the links are in my bio.